Today I want to talk about what makes a fighting game beginner friendly, because there's many aspects of these games that casuals I think see from the outside and think are very hard and aren't willing to really learn. And the biggest one has to be combos, because from the outside looking in, moving around on the screen and like hitting your opponent on its own seems pretty challenging. But then when you start putting attacks together and start doing fancy things, I think a lot of people feel like it's a chore to have to learn all that just to be decent at a game. And this is where I think auto combos sort of came in. Dbfz is a pretty good example of that. You can mash like square and get an entire combo into a level 1 and it does a cutscene. It looks really fancy, but all you're doing is pressing square. But I think that's enough for a casual to pick it up. Like they can see that, oh, I only need to press square and I can do all this. That seems fun. I don't need to learn any of the crazy stuff. And then I think that's kind of like how they hope to hook you in. And then you start to learn about optimization. You start to learn about why the auto combo isn't what you need to do all the time. Another great example of that is Granblue. The auto combo system in that game, you basically just mashed a button and then you did 3 attacks into, I think, a special move, or you like input the special move after your auto combo. So it kind of gave you the best of both worlds. You could mash a button and get some normals out, and then you just cancel it into a special move. It wasn't very hard to understand. But something else that game also had that was available to everybody at any time was easy inputs. You didn't have to play like a stylish mode or something to enable it. You had easy inputs, which basically meant you would press your special button plus a direction and then a special move would come out. I think special button plus forward was DP. And then for some characters with fireballs, I think you would just press the special button and it would come out. But the downside to it was that it had like a little cooldown bar above your health bar, and that basically told you the next time you could throw out another fireball. And if you used the special button, that meant your cooldown was a little bit longer. That was your penalty for using the special input. And so if you did the motion, like if you did a DP motion, your DP would be available faster than somebody who did forward and special button. And so this sort of eased casual players into learning the motion inputs over time, because they could still reap the benefits that their characters had by using the special button, but eventually they would be able to learn the motions and sort of ease themselves into it. However, where this system kind of went wrong was that pro players realized that you could use a special button for shortcuts for certain things, like using the special button. I think Charlotta, who's a charge character, could do moves after a charge move that she should not be able to do because of the special button, with just some weird things like that. Also, you could do a shortcut with the special button for super, which made some things a lot easier for everybody. So that was also a good thing. Another thing that game had that sort of catered towards more casual players was a block button. And so the idea was, if you don't want to hold back or you don't want to hold down back to block, you could hold this block button and then you'd hold down if you wanted to crouch, or just back if you wanted to block standing. And so for me, it kind of was unnecessary because I was just used to blocking normally. But for some of my friends who picked up that game, it felt more intuitive for them to just press a button to block. The only issue is that it would auto block cross-ups for you. And so in a similar fashion to how the special button kind of became a tool for higher level players, when it was pretty much intended for casual players, people would just hold the block button if you tried to cross them up on like Narmaya or something, who had a pretty good cross-up in her kit, but it was completely negated because you could just stand up and press the guard button. It would auto block whatever side she ended up on for you. And I don't know if this was intended, because if the guard button auto blocks cross-ups, for high level players, it's a free like get out of jail card. And for lower level players, they'll never learn how to actually block a cross up. And so it kind of feels like it shouldn't be a thing. But if I was a casual who relied on the block button and they crossed me up and it didn't block it, then I would kind of be pissed. And so I guess they kind of sided with the casuals in that regard, like for the people who are trying to learn. The last thing I want to talk about is damage, especially when it comes to a game like Guilty Gear Strive. That game was marketed towards a casual audience, a beginner audience that they wanted to bring in. And they did very well. That game sold ridiculously well on Steam. I think at 30,000 people on the first day. And so they hit their mark. But I think the reason why the damage is so high was so that they could achieve this. I know there's some people who are going to say in Rev 2 and like other ArcSys games or other fighting games in general, the damage is ridiculously high. But I think that the work that you have to do in Strive is a lot less than you have to do in some of those other games to get the amount of explosive damage that you do often get in that game. And I think this leads to people not having to learn such long combos. It cuts down on the amount of hits that you have to actually get in the game, and also leads to much shorter games. I think that's why some tournaments run like 3 out of 5 instead of 2 of 3. And I know somebody's going to make the argument that, well, Dbfz has touch of death combos. You literally get touched once and you die. But the level of execution that you have to have to perform that is nowhere near the same thing. Not to mention how much attention you have to pay to your meter and your resources to figure out if you're even going to be able to kill during your touch of death combo. One game that kind of tried to cater towards beginners or casuals a little too much, I think, was Fantasy Strike. That game was supposed to be like a gateway, so beginners would play it, get kind of used to how the games work, and then move on to like Street Fighter or something. I think that was kind of the sales pitch behind it. That was supposed to be sort of the drawing factor. And the game does do some things very well. I think the Yomi Counter is a very interesting system. So basically what it is instead of teching a throw, if you don't do anything when you get thrown, it automatically like techs for you. That's sort of to negate mashing. It's supposed to teach you to not mash. It also has like a gray life system if you block supers or I think special moves too. But the one place where I think it fails is movement. Your character can only walk left and right, and there's no crouching, dashing, or running. And so that means when you're trying to block, you have to hold away, of course, but it makes your character walk backwards. You can't down back like you can in any other game. It can kind of make things like walking and blocking and trying to take up space in neutral a little bit harder, because you can't like walk forward and then down back and walk and down back. You have to walk and then press back if you think they're going to press a button, and then you kind of lose space because you pressed it back for a second, and you can't do down back to like stay where you're at. You do have to press back to walk back a little bit. I know what they were going for with not having crouching because they don't want to have high-low mix-ups, but I do kind of feel like that's a fundamental part of learning fighting games. If that's what the game's aim is, to sort of get you into traditional fighting games like Street Fighter and stuff, I feel like you should have to learn that at least. The character archetypes in that game, though, were pretty good at introducing you to all the different things that you'll run into in other games. I think they had like Zoner, they had 2 rushdown characters. One of them was kind of like a Buki, and the other one, I don't really know who the other one was like. She had like a paintbrush. And they had the grapplers, and then they had some random ones. I think they had like a Faust sort of character that threw items, and they had a puppet character. I think his name was Justice or something like that, and he had a ghost behind him that he kind of controlled. But the one that stuck out to me most was Time and Clockwork. He was a charge character, and I think his whole thing was he was a time traveler, so he threw these little cogs. But he had a little cog in the bottom that would show you if you had charge or not to help you keep track. But since you can't down back in that game, holding charge is a little bit different, because usually in normal fighting games, like, you can hold charge by having down back, so you don't have to keep moving back, but you can also build charge. But since this game you can't crouch, I think what you would have to do is hold back to get charged and like stand still or something, and then maybe you could press the special button because you had charged. This game didn't have motions, right? So once you had charged, you probably press the special button and something would come out. I think he had a fireball, and then he had flash kick too. That's about the extent of my knowledge on that game. I don't remember much more than that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I'm gonna have a lot of different opinions on this, so leave them in the comments below, and if you enjoyed, consider subscribing. Thanks so much.